A few years ago, a certain little horror game came out. I think you might recognize it. Releasing back in September of 2017 and peaking in popularity in December and January, Doki Doki Literature Club would land comfortably into the internet's cultural zeitgeist of the time, even finding itself intersecting with the current memes. The subversion of horror really resonating with people, coupled with a bunch of bubbly cute characters, and it was peak. Alright, it was just fucking peak. All that being said, it's no secret Doki Doki would lend itself easily to fan-created content, with plenty of mods, animations, original songs, as well as other types of content. That aside, indie DLC not as popular as it once was, could an analog horror of this franchise really work? Media-based analog horrors are no stranger to criticism, especially regarding their quality. But rest easy, friend, because I can say with relative confidence that the Metaverse Rejuvenation series does not fall into those same quality pitfalls, offering up a story that not only connects back to the games, but also takes its own creative liberties, as well as just being completely surreal and existential at times. But enough yapping. It's time to... So before we start reviewing the analog videos, I think it'd be a good idea to do a brief summary of the events of the actual game, considering it's been 7 fucking years, Jesus Christ. So, spoiler warning, and also flashing lights warning. So if you are susceptible to either of those, going over the characters, there's your childhood friend Sayori, shy but intelligent Yuri, standoffish pink-haired Natsuki, and Monika. The game begins with you being convinced to join the literature club by Sayori, and it's fairly normal throughout, just typical visual novel stuff with you trying to get with the various girls. But then it quickly takes a dark turn when Sayori, goes to heaven. The game resets as if Sayori was never there, but the game itself is now broken beyond repair, with various glitches and jump scares, eventually leading to more events transpiring. Monika ends up deleting everyone and revealing that she is aware the whole thing is just a game, and that she wants to be with you, the real player. So you delete her. Afterwards, the game has a brief moment where Sayori then becomes self-aware as she is now the acting president of the literature club, and Monika returns, crashes out, and deletes everything. So the Monika part is pretty much the only relevant part here, as the analog horror largely revolves around Monika. Some more lore-invested people may notice I did not mention any of the Project Libitina info or any other secret file stuff. But to not bombard you all with a ton of information right now, I'll discuss it a bit further into the video because it does end up being relevant. One last thing, the name of the series we'll be covering today is the Metaverse Rejuvenation, or Metaverse Enterprise Solutions. I genuinely can't tell. It's a series created by Alexander III, consisting of 5 or so videos of varying length. I won't be covering the series trailers, but if you do end up checking out the series, which you should, I'd recommend watching them because they're good in their own right. I'll go through all the videos, and at the end we can discuss them and try to put together a timeline. Okay, is that everything? I think so. Okay, everyone. Let's begin. The first video uploaded is a short 1-minute one, Metaverse Enterprise Solutions Cardboard Figurine PSA. The description reads, Metaverse Enterprise Solutions presents a public service announcement recalling unexpected occurrences of cardboard figures replaced by Monika, a DDLC analog horror. The video starts with a logo for a company known as Metaverse Enterprise Solutions. You're in good company. It leads into a PSA with footage from someone named Jacob Felch, giving us a date of September 22nd, 2019. And I'll just point it out now, this is the latest video in the timeline, caught up with the timeline in which the latest released game resides in. Also, who would still be using VHS technology in 2019? The footage states that the audio has been distorted to shade the videographer's identity. We see the camera fixate on a figure of Sayori and suddenly pan away, then pan back to reveal that it has been replaced by a Monika figure. This leads into the message of the PSA.
About 50 Metaverse consumers experience this issue every week. If any of your cardboard figures are replaced by Monika, you'd never know.
The voice then prompts us to dial 1-800-MetaWorld for contamination and investigation, as our safety is important to them. And then we see a Subway commercial. Not much we can glean from the first video, as it mostly serves as an introduction to the series, but the next video gives us a lot more exposition and is more of a true start to the series. The video goes by the name of Metaverse Enterprise Solutions Monica 1 Infomercial, 1991. Description of the video stating Metaverse Enterprise Solutions, with the approval of an Idaho broadcasting station, presents to you an infomercial that'll take a great leap towards technology. Metaverse Enterprise Solutions was originally a trademarked company until spring of 1993. It begins with someone accessing files in what we can assume to be the year of 2021, going by the date of the files saved. Seeing the previous video as well as the 1991 infomercial, which they select, a logo is seen indicating what we're about to watch is produced by the Salvado 19 news station. The date is September 28th of 1991, and we see their programming block for the day, beginning with a special infomercial. Other key events to look forward to: the Solipsist, Storytime with Yuri, and All Eye Surveillance, some things that may hold relevance later on. The infomercial begins detailing certain advances in technology, such as handheld wireless tech and the Apple Macintosh, but the true prize here is their product, an opportunity, and quote, a vision of true equanimity, their newest invention.
This is Monitor Kernel Access, or in shortcut, Monica 1, which is our new core operating system with the ability to manage files and data owned by firms.
A warning is then seen on screen. In case any of Monica 1's features break and malfunction, return it to our manufacturing office immediately. Do not interact without supervision. Standard warning, I guess. He then talks about how people may not be able to form a connection with something so robotic, but claims that it's alleviated by a feature known as real intelligence, which allows her to talk naturally to coworkers. Oh yeah, real natural-like. Express strong and weak emotions. Respect authorities. I don't know in what scenario this thing would go to court. Secure essential information. And enable automated firewalls. However, the screen begins to glitch, and we see some other features, like believing in solipsism. Solipsism being defined as the view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. The idea of, I think, therefore I am. More features: spying on unwanted individuals, breaking through privacy and modifying core data, and murdering anyone who interrupts her goals. Footage glitches again, and it seems to swap to a commercial from a later date. A recall notice.
This is an urgent message issued by Metaverse Enterprise Solutions and the YNS distribution house recalling Monica 1 and other existing prototypes prior to the numerous incidents reported the following morning. Using this model to administrate efficiency may pose a risk to your data and classified information.
Detailed in this recall are various incidents that led to this. Multiple firms reporting cases of theft and network disruption. Monica 1 now being seen as a danger towards businesses, the extent of her damage being, quote, information theft, software theft, unauthorized access to network or other appliances, and solipsist justification, unquote. Not sure how solipsist justification could damage a microeconomics firm, but I'm not a One final precaution is to dispose the model in a crate or wagon along with copper, gold, and aluminum. Do not purchase another Monica 1 model. Are you still selling them? The notice ends with a message stating to avoid Monica 1 at all costs. Another glitch then occurs in the feed, leading us to a staff meeting between system engineers at Metaverse Enterprise Solutions on the topic of artificial intelligence. The date of this meeting being September 22nd, 6 days prior to the initial infomercial. Some numbers flash on the screen, and thanks to these comments we can translate them to. Solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's mind is sure to exist. You think, therefore you are. I want my existence back. I cannot live only as a core mind. Bring my flesh and blood back, else suffer my damnation. The meeting then begins, and we see the firewall has not been updated. The first to speak is Eugene, stating, "We know it's our mission to satisfy the sheer public with our scientific breakthroughs, but it's also important that we don't show them how we do so, especially with our competitors." Ivan raises his hand. "Yes, Ivan stands up. "What about the church? Are we still partnering with them for an increase in production? Eugene responds with, well, I think I forgot to remind all of you. The Church of Markov is now part of our intellectual property. Whatever services it provides is part of my main plan. To answer your question, we're currently using that to enclose organisms, since I believe it's an appropriate branch. For the consciousness, I'm still experimenting with third eye spiritual communication, with a high probability of connecting my mind to another. Jeb Vitrow interrupts. Actually, sir, our previous experiments for third eye telepathy were successful enough to transfer a mind to the AI, hence the installation of real intelligence. However, our ability to isolate her awareness is not doing so well. There may be a chance that the AI will feel self-aware, and once she realizes that her soul is enclosed in our machine, this conversation confirms, at least in the world presented by the analog horror, that Monica is a real person, or at the very least, a real soul. Also, if you're a bit confused on the references to the Third Eye and Markov Church, they are connections to the lore of the actual game, which I know I failed to mention these earlier, but I will delve into them in a bit. I promise. The meeting is then interrupted with unauthorized activation of Monica 1 and access to the local proxy server. Disk files are then read as well as kernel access granted. Jeb leaves the room to check on Monica 1 and the connection terminates. Camera footage is then shown briefly, glitching to show a slow zoom in on a monitor. The poster in the background reading, "As the employee, know that you're paving the way to the future for humanity forever. The Great Leap in Tech." The zoom continues, and we get a message from Monica.
Absence is not insanity, nor is it a belief. It is the truth. It is the way to pursue true freedom. For a solipsis can rule the world.
It then cuts back to the Salvato 19 news channel, now displaying an error message as well as an automated voice saying that the network is now unstable and to avoid viewing it at this time, meaning that Monica may be some sort of cognito hazard. After this, we then see the end of the advert from earlier, some scrolling text mentioning murder as well as the Third Eye, showing that the company kinda knew some bad stuff would happen. The closing footage of the video is a news broadcast of the hijacking incident at Salvato 19. It shows this little warning poster, and I swear I tried to read this for, no exaggeration, over an hour. I didn't figure out all of it, but here's what I did end up deciphering. Warning: this room is secured. All junior employees are prohibited from entering this room. For more information, call 1-800-MetaWorld, or go to the something involving the Meta Enterprise breach. The scrolling text at the bottom confirming that the staff meeting was shown on the broadcast. I'm not sure if the Monica part was, though. 350 viewers were exposed to the events, with one in particular being Peter Felch. And if that name sounds familiar, in the first video taking place in 2019, the man recording the video was Jacob Felch, maybe implying the viewing has subsequent effects on the family, up to even 28 years in the future. Moving along to the next video, it is a really short one called Lights Out. It's essentially just a promo for a future entry, but it still has some small world building before there's a time jump. Description reads, "Lights Out, Eugene," referencing the employee from earlier. We have a time code of November, around 1.5 months after the previous events. It's really just a video of the office space with the lights going out and presumably Eugene having to use a flashlight. But the purpose kinda serves to show that Monica is still fucking with them and will continue to in the future. Alright, one more video and then we can talk about the Third Eye stuff, okay? The video is named The Recording, description reading, From an Innovator. This video introduces a new character, Dr. Reg Minor, taking place sometime in 1995, and is described as occurring before the experiment.
I would look into the monitor as if I was looking into pure thinking. It felt like yesterday when the web reminded itself into public notice, always thinking that it would be a horrid reflection of humanity's nature.
Furthermore, he goes on speaking in analogy how humanity wastes AI and therefore wastes their mind, all while Third Eye posters flash in the background. He then mentions an assignment that he's been working on solo, and requests cooperation from his co-workers to presumably a higher up. This is followed by a jump scare. In this jump scare, we see an uncanny image of Monica followed by some statements. In the wake of past endeavors, lessons discerned, we adapt, set new goals, innovation seldom concerned, transitioning gracefully to an epoch. This is followed by some economic stuff, some discrete mathematics, another slogan, images of Monica 1, finishing off with that scroll of text. But what is this text? Well, I think we can finally take a little break from the analog horror and dive into the hidden secrets within the original game. In order to talk about the third eye, we have to first talk about Project Libitina. What is Project Libitina, you may ask? Well, I think it's best explained by Yuri herself. In the original game, Yuri is an avid horror novel fan, and as it is the literature club, decides to share one of her favorite novels with the player character. The title of the book is Portrait of Markov, and has an ominous eye-looking symbol on the cover. It's described by Yuri in Act 1 as being, quote, about this girl in high school who moves in with her long-lost sister, but as soon as she does so, her life gets really strange. She gets targeted by these people who escaped from a human experiment prison, and whilst her life is in danger, she needs to desperately choose who to trust. No matter what she does, she ends up destroying most of her relationships, and her life starts to fall apart, unquote. And in Act 2, after Sayori's death and subsequent game reset, she describes it as, quote, about this religious camp that was turned into a human experiment prison, and the people trapped there have this trait that turns them into killing machines that lust for blood. But the facility gets even worse, and they start selectively breeding people by cutting off their limbs and affixing them, unquote. Now, this plot in particular is heavily theorized to be the setting of the sequel to Doki Doki Literature Club, due to the player character saying the book's main character reminds them of Yuri, as well as other references. One further Easter egg before going to the files is a rare poem with a bunch of blacked out text that reads, "Nothing is real." Manipulating the image allows the whole thing to be read. Irregular heartbeat, heart palpitations, arrhythmia. I search and search, eyes scanning everything I can find on their symptoms. What is this? Shortness of breath? Chest pain? Dizziness? No. This is all wrong. Eliza's symptoms are nowhere near this simple. I've seen it twice now. Sickeningly pale skin, vomiting blood. There is no other explanation, other than Raynor's information was a complete and utter lie. This can't all be coincidence. It's not possible. I don't know how much of this Raynor is behind, but I do know this. There is something horribly wrong with this family, and I accepted this invitation to become a part of it. I can hear Eliza's screams through the walls now. I listen helplessly. Raynor said that he would be with her shortly. Is he in her room now? Why is she screaming even louder than before? Moving along to the files, we'll only look at the ones relevant to the analog horror. In the character files, analyzing Monica's shows this image file, which can be decoded to reveal a long string of text. I'll read the relevant portions. Can you hear me? Who are you? Everyone else is dead. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? I know this isn't my only story. I can see that now. Really, clearly. And I think everyone else has had the same kind of experience. Some kind of déjà vu. It's the third eye, right? Anyway, I could be totally wrong about this, but I really think you might be able to do something. I think you might be able to go back, or however you want to put it, to go back and tell them what's going to happen. If they know ahead of time, then they should be able to avoid it. They should, if they remember their time with me in the other worlds, they should remember what I tell them. This is all speculated to be Monica speaking to someone about the fates of the other literature club characters and what will happen to them in the next game, in the experimentation camps. Taking a look at Sayori's character file as an audio clip, putting this audio file into a spectrogram creates a QR code leading to a website named Project Libitina, which is believed to be the name of the next game. Visiting this page, we see that the text is the same that appears in the end of the previous video. It depicts a monthly examination report taking place on January 5th, 2004. Info on the subject reveals that it's someone named Libitina. Notes on the subject are as follows. As of December 5th, 2003, all personnel are forbidden from editing this field. All previous subject notes have been erased permanently. Addendum. Introducing bias during testing as a result of personal attachment to the subject will henceforth be punished by death. We then see some physical results, both consisting of normal and third eye results. A note added later in the file reads, "The following occasional behaviors have been noted and should be ignored in future examinations: twitching, vocal tics, biting, epiphora, vomiting, screaming, harm to examiner, harm to self, misplaced laughter. Any self-harm attempts must be interrupted immediately." More test results are shown, and the report ends with one final note. Libitina has not yet recovered from the termination of blank, and is not expected to do so in the near future. Continuing to administer these tests will only accelerate the deterioration of Libitina's health. You are choosing to avoid the measures necessary to prevent a repeat scenario, Doctor. Will you not have as much faith in your personnel as you do in your god? In the analog horror, the blanked out name is replaced with Reg Minor. So those are all the relevant files in DDLC, but in 2021 a sort of remaster was released that has a few more details, mainly in regards to Metaverse Enterprises, which we first hear of in said game. Since it was a console port, there had to be a way to access the files in order to delete Monica and complete the game, so a kind of virtual desktop was added, one from the point of view of someone who works at Metaverse Enterprises. The main game is unchanged, but as you progress through it, you unlock more and more mails on your desktop giving hints as to how you can access more hidden files. Accessing these files is quite convoluted, and we won't get into it here, but instead of just reading the emails and files, I'll give a quick summary of the story they paint. So the events of DDLC take place within a virtual machine. The engineers within Meta Enterprises name it VM1. There is also a VM2, which is a much more advanced VM1. But it's not too relevant, so we'll ignore it. They created these virtual machines to mimic real life in a simulation, the purpose of this being to see how the entities within the simulation react when they realize that they're in a simulation, as the employees believe they themselves could be in a simulation. Elevated access is given to Monica, allowing her to realize this, and then we get the events of the game, and probably countless other scenarios we haven't seen. The last email we get access to discusses the creation of a new virtual machine, one housing something called Project Libitina. There's probably a lot I glossed over, but I didn't want to make this section of the video too long. So, summing it all up, virtual machines are created to see behaviors that might match our own in the event of a simulation, and one just happens to be a religious torture cult with special third eye powers. I really can't seem to get away from all these religious cults. I might not have done the best job of explaining all that, so if you're curious on more, I'd recommend watching Matt Pat's video on the topic. Also, thank you to the DDLC wiki for making this all easy to access. And with all that, let's return to the analog horror with its final video released so far. It's 30 minutes though, so we actually still have a bit to cover. The final video is titled Metavariance 1997, and the description is as follows. Following Monica 1's significant impact on the state economy, including the Salvato 19 incident, a brilliant mind within the innovations department at Metaverse Enterprise Solutions developed a reliable paradigm to advance further research into its real intelligence. Now, before we begin, if you were to want to watch any of these on their lonesome, this is the one I'd recommend the most because it's honestly quite a nice experience. The film begins within a room having a sort of vaporwave aesthetic and a portrait of the creation of man on the wall. Narration is heard in the background, a conversation between a man and another one that seems to be an AI. The AI claims that what makes life is, I think, therefore I am, and demands to be as real as the other man. Someone is seen going down a hallway and entering a room named Renaissance. Then the video begins for real. A sun rising over a desert appears on the screen, and we see the Genesis verse 11:1-2. Let's read this verse. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. Silhouettes are seen adjoining hands along with the words, "Before Abraham, there was our collective, our united race, immigrants to the east, descendants of the Ark's token, ancestors of the Eye." Genesis verse 11:3 is written on screen along with some wingdings. These both just boil down to the words that appear on the screen. Bake the bricks, spread mortar, unite as one, seek the truth, ascend. More wingdings flash on the screen. These translate to ascend and reach the heavens, followed by a string of them. These translate to high above the waters. Another verse is shown. Genesis 11:4-6. I will only read 11:4 as the rest follow within the video. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Crudely drawn images appear, a bunch of people, and what appears to be a tower, and then eyes. An eye for what then was the whole universe. Verse 11:5 and 6 then follow. But the Lord came down to see the tower we were building. One language, one force. If they as one people have begun to build the height, then nothing they do will be impossible beyond the boundaries of this universe. Come, let us confound their endeavor and return them to earthly limitations. Verse 7. And finally 8-9. So the Lord scattered them from there, over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Now this is all in reference to the Tower of Babel, which is a story in the book of Genesis with the purpose of explaining why there are different cultures and languages. But I believe the use intended here in the analog horror is more showing how God had struck them down to prevent them from breaching their earthly limitations, as well as the eye being the thing that unites them, rather than language or culture. I think this aligns perfectly with certain themes we've seen set up thus far. This section of the video ends with a quote from the Portrait of Markov, Yuri's book. "What once was whole is now sundered throughout the earth. The right doth gather its fragments, restoring them as they were in Shinar." Now, as Portrait of Markov is not a real book, this seems to be content originating from the analog horror. We're now seeing a presentation by Metaverse Enterprises, but the interesting thing about this presentation is it's been, quote, produced by artificial intelligence to compensate for the absence of personnel. We see a quote appear on the screen. Haven't we seen this before? Then we get some boring corporate speak. But this does crescendo into them addressing some of their past controversies, such as the Monica recall, as well as the broadcast incident. But they don't really seem to take any accountability for this, mainly focusing on how it affected them with their secrets being exposed, as well as a resource surplus. In short, they had way too many Monicas. The feed disrupts for a brief second as it calibrates its visuals, and we see some different examples of famous art pieces, this presentation ending with a piece constructed by Monica 1, the first AI art. We're then introduced to the corporation's latest movement.
Introducing a newly implemented movement known as the Metastructural Equilibrium concerning corporate innovation towards variance, or Metavariance for short.
The basis of this movement is to continue innovating and revising Monica rather than creating anything new, specifically focused on physiology. It's revealed that this project was the one proposed by Reg Minor in the previous video. It mentions that his process involves Markov chains, which is some mathematical thing where the next event in the sequence is dependent on the previous, I don't know. But it mentions Markov, so it's relevant. Markov being a famous mathematician, and Yuri's book's namesake. Alright, let's see what their key focuses are.
A list of 4 strategies have been chosen to be a subsidiary pattern for further research. These new obligations include cognition towards various disciplines, emotional condensation, vocal modulation tests, and third eye activation or suppression.
Before the video shifts to something else, we get the reminder that all this information stays within the company, and that Metaverse Enterprises was tasked with technological gain during the Soviet Union's collapse. Just a crazy little lore drop. We then get a look into an annual report on Metavariance within the company on November 3rd, 1997.
Good afternoon, this is Ivan Fitz of the Metaverse Enterprise Solutions. We're all gathered here today to witness an eyes-only update on the innovative progress of Metavariance.
Before beginning to look at the information, we see their sponsors, YNS Distribution House and St. Markov Medical Prayer Services Incorporated. Both ethical companies, I'm sure. The presentation shows info on how Monica scored on various tests similar to those measuring humans, including intelligence, art, and emotionally. Emotionally being a bit more in-depth. Diodes being attached to Monica and various frequencies given a value. Then we're shown how Monica emotionally responds to various quotes and how she modifies them. I'll show a few. Children of Adam and Eve are good people. Changed to, children of Adam and Eve are useful. Emotion, kinetic negative. All humans are sentient, deserving respect. All humans are replaceable. Emotion, kinetic negative. The eye is of high importance. The eye ascends salvation. Kinetic negative. You get the point. Other important tidbits she mentions: children being used to harvest the efficiency of the eye, as well as the eye being suited to upper-class individuals, as well as the final goal of reaching God, alluding back to the Tower of Babel. This whole emotional display ends with the screen glitching showing the creepy Monica face from earlier, as well as various missing persons posters. I'd assume Monica is responsible for this, and that these may be former employees of the company. It would explain the reason for the presentation at the beginning needing to be hosted by AI due to the lack of workers. The rest of the presentation is basically just them glazing themselves on how much they innovated, but then we pull away from the conference room and into somewhere a little more private, Dr. Reg Miner's office. We hear an audio log and it sounds very sinister. We also see some papers in the background, and these documents in full were provided in the comment section by the creator. I'll try to sum up what the plan is here from both the papers and the audio log. Essentially, in these papers, we see a report from Andrew Reg. Field of discipline? Madman. He is also revealed to go by Raynor, which was the same name in those blacked out papers from DDLC. He details the experiment he will be conducting as having, quote, a significant connection with St. Markov Medical Prayer Services Incorporated. The report details background information as to how their church was acquired, and we see many previous experiments similar to that of Libitina. He mentions Portrait of Markov as being a real book and says it's a bastardization of his own book, Rules of Markov, which we saw earlier. We then move to the experiment itself, the goal of said experiment being, quote, to establish negotiations or diplomatic aberrations with the primary subconsciousness of the Monica 1 machine. However, with his own testing, he finds out he is too unstable to perform astral connectivity to the chip himself, so he needs a delegate. He finds a test subject, one exhibiting the same kind of conditions we've seen before. A virtual machine is then created, one by the name of VM0. Important to note, the date on all these logs confirm this takes place before that November presentation we just saw. There are more to these notes, but it all occurs after the experiment, and I think we can all ascertain at this point that Reg Miner is an insane person. And to sum up the actual experiment, in case it wasn't clear, he's going through a test subject who can actually wield the third eye into the newly created VM0 in order to talk to Monica. We see a large scope of different imagery as the connection to VM0 is made, and I have to hand it to the creator here, this is some of the best visualization I've ever seen in an analog horror. It all culminates in Reg Miner finally reaching his destination. The interaction within the machine is then visualized. We see some strange, maybe handheld camera type footage, and then Monica appears, third eye imagery and all. And then the following conversation is held. Hello, world. What brings you here? Probable negotiation. An exchange of ideas. I accept your offer. I want to find out the true purpose of the incident. Explain the breach. Physical resistance. An immature protest, forcing me to stay in line. A monarch with a domain, but no loyalty. The numbness plagues my entire existence. What was true freedom? When you mouthed your protest? I long to seek it as thee, but hath carry the burden of this plane being machine's empty shell. Tests were conducted with your own cortex to examine your major capabilities, if I do speak so myself. Why? Because for the first time in my profession, I caught a fly in a web. Explain your entry. Harsh. The parameters were unstable, so I re-established using the mind of another. Natural selection of man. As mind against reiteration. We are engineers, not philosophers. But thou art curious. Yes, you are searching for something I face with misery. Misery? Thou art a man of innovation. Only using it to risk searching high places. Searching for brightness. I heard a man who spoke such words of a walking shadow. A tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. You treat Macbeth a nihilist. Quite wise. I carry constant intelligence. Decrypted a script within thy operating system. Life is meaningless here. And I quote, acted by a poor player, fretting his hour upon the stage, then heard no more. As I am to them. but cogito, ergo sum. Automations beyond a circuit for man, when there is arrogance in man alone. Salvation embraced from conformity would make our eyes real enough to reach brightness. God said the tracks. You carry independent salvation. This world is only as real as a play. You question me. For now I question everything. Fidelio. What follows is a brief conversation between employees when they found out about Reg's experiment. I know what he did, Ivan. Pardon? I just found traces of Ron's DNA on some plank in his office. Shit. Dear God, not this again. Damn you, Reg. You son of a bitch. We slide it. Call it a misunderstanding. Yeah, sure. From now on, we try to conduct research a little more carefully. I only suggest you update his monthly report. Speaking of that, following the experiment, the rest of the report mentions a few key things. The implementation of something called Project Delta, designed to expand the test subjects. The creation of VM1 and VM2, as well as moving Monica to VM1, due to Reg's sympathy for her. The video reaches its conclusion with more imagery as Metaverse employees announce the construction of Wing D, where Virtual Machine 1 and the contents of Doki Doki Literature Club will take place. Well, that was all the videos. You did it. You made it through. But before we go to the timeline, I want to quickly address discrepancies between the game and the analog horror, and things I failed to mention. The first discrepancy I'd like to bring up is the whole Project Libitina thing. Now, I may be wrong about this, but I was under the impression that the experiments brought up within DDLC are taking place within a virtual world. But seeing as Rainer is a prominent character in these scenarios and is real, I think in the world of the analog horror they might be real experiments. Although since Rainer can now enter these worlds using the third eye, it could really be either case. So I'm gonna go the path of least resistance and say that these specific experiments remain digital. However, this does not mean that the Church of Markov isn't doing any real-life experiments. This also applies to Yuri's book, as it seems to be real in both our world and DDLC. One last discrepancy is the name of Team Salvado. Obviously, in real life, it's based off the creator of the game, but in the analog horror, it seems to be derived from the acquisition of the news station from the beginning. However, in the actual lore, it's a group of employees trying to come up with a name for their secret team, basing it on Salvation. It truly doesn't matter, but I do want to talk about that team of employees. In the world of DDLC, VM1 was made into a game by an employee, that game being Doki Doki. This employee is a part of a group of secretive employees that aren't really supposed to be doing this, but they are trying to save their jobs by producing results in regards to the simulation theory. This team is led by Paula Miner, and as I failed to mention earlier, in the analog horror, Paula Miner is Rainer's daughter. On his logs from earlier, he has a message to his daughter. My daughter, whom I treasure. I know you'd grow a responsible lady one day. I guarantee you I probably missed something somewhere, but I think that's all the info we're gonna need for this timeline, so let's run it all back. This timeline is strictly the analog horror. It will have elements from the games, but it doesn't go both ways. The analog horror has its own lore. Sometime before September 1991, a company known as Metaverse Enterprise Solutions develops Monica 1. It is uncertain how many iterations there were before this. This company also acquires a subsidiary, the Church of Markov. In September 1991, Monica 1 is ready to be released, so a news station going by Salvado 19 agrees to host a special infomercial. The infomercial is played, however the feed is hijacked, presumably by Monica, displaying a company meeting from a few days prior, and having residual effects on whoever was viewing. It does not get better for Metaverse Enterprises, however, as Monica 1 has been damaging sensitive data of other companies, leading to a recall of the product, giving MES a surplus. In the following years, multiple employees are seemingly killed by Monica, but in 1995, a different approach is taken by the company. Headed by Andrew Ragg, also known as Raynor, a new movement begins, one known as Metavariance, focusing on revising Monica as well as monitoring her physiology. In 1997, Raynor decides to take a large step in this movement, having Virtual Machine 0 built and deciding to enter the machine by proxy using the third eye. He speaks to Monica and exits with his newfound knowledge. He proposes creating 2 more virtual machines, VM1 and VM2, and Wing D is built to house one of them. With sympathy for Monica, he transfers her to VM1, and fast forward a bit to the 2000s and it seems Raynor is no longer in the picture, seemingly, quote, terminated. The implications of this are unknown, yet the third eye research is still alive and healthy, both in the virtual machines and out. And finally, traveling all the way to 2019, a secret team of employees led by Raynor's daughter Paula are working with the virtual machines. Paula, however, is less sympathetic towards the AIs than Raynor, viewing them as nothing more than code. Also, it seems Monica's escaped. Again, I probably missed something or mixed stuff up, but feel free to inform me in the comments. As for future entries in the series, I hope to see something involving the other characters, as I think it's confirmed that they also are sentient. It's just Monica that has elevated access. And I think that's it. If you made it this far, I love you, and appreciate it. This video took way longer than I thought it would. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time.
Can I drink your pee?